All right, cool. So I just cut the penny. I just did the peeler. And then most people get one of these two items for free. And I'll show you more about that later. Now, let me ask you, Miss Jones, are you ready to see the world's most expensive set of knives?
Oh, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so these right here are actually the world's most expensive set of knives. And the reason is because people spend a lot of money, they buy them over and over again. Now, before I get into all this stuff, let me ask you, like, what kind of knives do you guys have? Like, do you have like a really nice fancy set that you bought, years ago, or did you get like a nice set for your wedding? Do you have like a mix and match set that you've made over the years, or do you just have like a throw together set that you got like at a bargain store? What are you guys cooking with?
I got like a wedding gift, just kind of like Henckels.
Okay, so you have some Henckels now. Do you use them a lot? Like, do you sharpen them or anything like
I have to
that?
sharpen them occasionally.
Okay, cool. So if they have Henckels, I'm going to do a completely different thing. I'm going to be like, hey, well, obviously, like quality, I'm not going to waste your time talking about junk, but I'll tell you, people that have Henckels, the reason they always buy Cutco is because they're made for chefs and not families. And what they found is that since they're made for chefs, they're made to be sharpened every single time you use them, which no one wants to spend their time doing that. Also, they're not made for the dishwasher, so they have to be hand washed. There's no warranty against other than manufacturing defects. So let me show you why those people decided to buy Cutco. That's what I'd do if they said they had Wusthof or Henckels, depending on like what level of Wusthof and Henckels. Most of the time, they're like, I got a mix and match set. I got a couple good knives, a couple bad knives. But like, perfect. Well, let me talk to you about the differences. First of all, knives are made with this philosophy. It's called planned obsolescence, okay? It's a fancy word that means planned to fail. See, knives are made just like everything else in the economy, to where they pick inferior products or inferior materials and they manufacture them so that way they break after a certain amount of time. Very similar to like phones, right? They make screens out of glass on purpose. So when they break, you got to buy a new one. Light bulbs, tires, a lot of things are made that way to where after a certain amount of time, they're going to break and it forces the consumer to go back and buy more. It's like everything else in the world, okay? And there's different types of knives, there's different types of materials that they use. So the first ones you'll see are wooden handles. See, wooden handles, they're attractive when they're new, but I'm talking they fade, they absorb moisture, bacteria, grease, germs, they retain odors. I mean, have you ever like grabbed the wooden handle knife and you'll see that like it's kind of sticky? You know what your fingers are touching? Thousands, I'm talking millions of bacteria that's festering and molding from the inside out. I mean, have you ever smelled a wooden handle knife? It smells like sweat, you can only imagine. Have you ever like made spaghetti sauce with a wooden spoon, like a wooden handle spoon? What color is the spoon when you're done? Yeah, the same color as what you were stirring. So imagine what happens when you cut chicken. All that chicken blood goes right in. Oh, imagine when you throw the knife in the dishwasher. Wooden handles are actually so unsanitary that they're banned by the FDA in the back of restaurants in 38 states. They're so because before they banned them, there were so many cases of botulism, salmonella. I'm talking E. coli, like horrible stuff. So, and the reason is because wood's porous. Everything it comes in contact with, it's going to soak in. So wood is very unsanitary. I mean, the University of Wisconsin did a study back in the early 2000s. They found more bacteria in a wooden handle with one knife than the toilet of a public restroom. I mean, and Ms. Jones, if wooden knives can't even be used at a Waffle House, like I'd never use them for my family. You know what I mean? So then a lot of people some people know that. However, a lot of people buy plastic, right? See, plastic is very sanitary. However, it's cheap. It falls apart. It doesn't last very long. See, a lot of times plastic handle knives are glued together, so they end up falling apart in the dishwasher. Have you ever seen that happen before? The biggest issue though is that plastic and water don't mix. Have you ever played on a slip and slide when you were a kid, or do your kids ever play on a slip and slide? Put a little bit of water, some soap. It's just like washing your hands. So you wash your hands and you can slip and cut yourself. It's very, very dangerous. Now, there's two different types of steel, right? So you're gonna see that there's carbon steel. Carbon steel, we call that the won't knife because we call it the will knife because it will rust, it will corrode, but it will also stay sharp. But you're not going to find it that often because it's really unsanitary, it's rusty. Stainless steels, you're going to find that often. We call it the won't knife because it won't rust, it won't pit, it won't corrode, but it also won't stay sharp. See, stainless steel is what they make spoons out of, like silverware, right? Have you ever gone into like ice cream with like a regular spoon instead of like an ice cream scoop? Or maybe your kids do this. What happens to the spoon immediately? It bends, right? So imagine what happens when you take that knife, that delicate edge of the knife on a cutting board. It just goes dull really fast. Or disposable razor blades. You could probably only get like a use or two out of those things. So it's the same metal that they make knives out of, so they just don't last very long. So people that have stainless steel, they just end up having to sharpen their knives more than necessary, and they just end up throwing them away. Now, the construction of a knife is very important too. So the tang is how far the blade goes into the handle. So if you hold your hand out, let me show you something. So a lot of companies will have a partial tang where the blade only goes halfway through. And if you close your hand right now, you'll see that it's not that sturdy. So open your hand all the way. Then some companies have a full tang. If you close your hand, see it's a lot sturdier. That's the difference between the full tang and partial tang, right? So check this out. This knife right here only has a partial tang. So companies do that because they save money. They're also making a lot more money because that knife's gonna break faster. When it breaks, what do people have to do? Yeah, but I know. So it's just the way, it's a plain obsolescence thing. Rivets are the nails that hold the knives together. So there's different types. Like some knives, if they're plastic, they'll have these fake rivets. They're actually really just buttons. They don't even do anything. Most companies, they'll make their knives with brass rivets. Now brass, the problem with it is brass is a soft metal. So this is kind of like the rivet in the wooden handle knife. So when brass gets hot, it expands, it contracts, it loosens. So what starts to happen is you get this little gap. You notice how sometimes they're bulging or sometimes they're indented. So right here, you'll see how there's all this little green stuff. That's where all the bacteria just gets caked up. Have you ever had exterminators come to your house? You know the first place they always start? The kitchen. So that's where all the bacteria is, right? So yeah, brass rivets, nasty. Now the edges, this is pretty cool. So there's different types of edges. The first one would be a serrated edge. See, in this serrated edge, it's gonna rip and tear your food, right? Now they work when they're new, but once the points wear down, they can't be resharpened. So, I mean, honestly, the sharpest they'll be is the day that you bought them. Now a straight edge, right, looks like this, where it has a sharp tip. However, when you use the knife, you have to sharpen it with a rod or like some stone of some sort if you do that to get the edge back on there. But it's this constant action of sharpening the knife. It gets to the point where you can't resharpen it, so you have to throw it away and buy a new one, and it's just like a pencil. You just have to constantly sharpen them so they can remain effective. So the hard cutting surface is actually what dulls the knife, not the food that you're cutting. And both these types of edges come in direct contact with the cutting board. So now that you know about Cutco, or now that you, whoa, pause there. Now that you know about the disadvantages and what common people run into, like what are some, if you could make like your perfect set of knives, what would you keep from going wrong with them?
What would I keep from going wrong with them?
What would you not want to
Yeah,
like? What's
I
a problem you wouldn't
them
want to
stay
have?
Sharp.
Okay, so
I
you want to
wouldn't
stay
want them
sharp.
to dull out.
What else?
I wouldn't want them to contain bacteria.
Okay,
Stay
so sanitary. Okay,
Mm,
what else?
Not break.
So sturdy.
Yeah.
Cool.
And just last, yeah.
Cool. So last. All right. Let me ask you this: out of 21 meals a week, how many meals did you say that you guys eat out?
7.
7. Okay. So that means that you're using knives. You guys eat out like once a day.
Yeah.
Okay. That means that you use knives in your kitchen 21 minus 20, 21 meals a week minus 7. What are we at? We're at 14. So that means you use knives about 14 times a week. So if you think about that, 15, let's just say 15. 15 times 50, what's that? 200 and, no, more. What's 15 times 50?
225.
225?
Yeah.
50? 15 times?
15 times 15 is 225.
15 times 50.
Oh, yeah, that's way more than that. Like,
Yeah, so 15 times 50. I mean, we're talking a couple thousand. 700?
that's over 750.
Usually they say like 3. They're like, oh, 3 times a week, or, you know, once a week, like we eat out. Like that's what most customers say. They're like, oh, like once or twice a week. And I'm like, all right, that means that you use knives like 20 times a week in your house. Like, Ms. Jones, you know what that comes out to? 20 times a week, that's 1,000 times this year that you're gonna use your knives. So the reason why I cover this is because some people, they've realized this stuff. They're like, all right, yeah, it's time. I use knives every single day. Considering if you use something 1,000 times, like why just get by? And some people, they never thought about it. So hopefully when I'm done with this presentation, I can show you how Cutco has solved all your problems for you. I go to the next page. So that's 9 minutes, dude.